Intel's L turns into a big W. Apple is finally done with Beeper Mini. And AMD is about to release a very good price CPU that'll put them on top for a long while. Let's get into the hot news. It is Friday, December 22nd, 2023. We're going to start off today talking about the headline story from yesterday, which was about how Meteor Lake laptops actually lost to AMD when it came to CPU performance, specifically in Linux, with Meteor Lake losing by 28% to the equivalent 7840U. It was a big loss for Intel on their latest chips, but it turns out Phoronix wasn't done with any of their testing, because they showed that in Linux, when you actually take into consideration the integrated graphics, not just the CPU, but also what is comprised on the rest of the chip, that the Intel CPU absolutely still leads. So it looks like the ARC graphics in the Meteor Lake chips is about 8% faster than the 7840U. It's 62% faster than the previous 1280p, so it is considerably faster than what Intel was using previously, and is winning against AMD currently. And this is on top of the fact that with CPU benchmarks, Meteor Lake is still winning when it comes to things like Windows and not necessarily Linux. So this is a good overall look at what Intel is capable of with Meteor Lake. It is slower in single core performance on CPU. It can't do everything on the CPU side, but considering it as a total package, Phoronix is showing that it is definitely competitive at this point, which is a good thing to see. What's also a good thing to see is today's video sponsor.
Today's video is sponsored by Vanta. Vanta is a compliance automation and trust management platform that helps businesses of all size manage risk, improve security in real time. Being responsible for security at a startup can be overwhelming, and that's where Vanta's continuous monitoring comes in. Vanta automates compliance monitoring for your most critical programs and workflows. By streamlining vendor security reviews and asset discovery, you can quickly find and eliminate points of unauthorized access and proactively address potential threats. And because Vanta automates up to 90% of the work for SOC 2, ISO 27001, and more, you'll be able to focus on strategy and security, not maintaining compliance. You can see why over 6,000 companies like Chili Piper, Patch, and Autodesk use Vanta to manage risk, improve security in real time.
So you can click our link in the video description, vanta.com/UFD, to watch the 3-minute demo video from Vanta. Again, go to vanta.com/UFD, check it out for their 3-minute demo, and big thanks to Vanta for sponsoring today's video. And Apple's saying no thanks to Beeper when it comes to the whole situation of trying to get iMessage working on Android. Beeper says that it is done playing the cat and mouse game to try to bring iMessage to Android, and that they are issuing one final solution that they hope Apple is okay with. And this is a little worse than it was previously. The biggest thing for me to take away from this article, though, is the fact that it's been a month since Beeper Mini launched, which time feels a little weird there, but previously it was that you had to have a Mac of some kind in order to authenticate your Android device to use iMessage, but now it goes a step even further beyond that, where you actually need an iPhone and a Mac or Linux computer. So the iPhone also has to be jailbroken, whether it's the iPhone 6, 6S, SE1, 7, 8, or 10, those have to be jailbroken iPhones, which leads people to ask why. Why is this even a thing at this point when Beeper Mini just worked flawlessly on every single Android device? It was definitely a good thing to bring iMessage to Android, but now that it requires so many hoops to jump through, I think most people will just end up waiting for RCS. Beeper did say that each time that Beeper Mini goes down or is made unreliable due to interference by Apple, Beeper's credibility takes a hit. It's unsustainable, and as much as we want to fight for what we believe is a fantastic product that really should exist, the truth is that we can't win a cat and mouse game with the largest company on earth. With our latest software release, we believe we've created something that Apple can tolerate existing. We do not have any current plans to respond if this solution is knocked offline. There is some discussion that Beeper might rent some of these jailbroken phones out to people in the future if Apple doesn't take this down, but I wouldn't hold your breath. It was cool to see this happen. It was awesome to see that somebody reverse engineered iMessage, but it ends up being a nothing burger at the end because Apple decides that it's going to protect its own servers. But there's also been a cat and mouse game between Intel and Nvidia, specifically with Intel's CEO saying some pretty inflammatory things with regards to why Nvidia is succeeding at the moment when it comes to AI. Part of that, at least according to Pat Gelsinger, is the fact that Nvidia got lucky, saying that it was indeed pure luck. However, people at Nvidia don't see it that same way. One of the things that Pat Gelsinger talks about in this MIT MIT interview where he made these statements. He talks about how his previous project, Project Larrabee, actually got canned by Intel, and one of the things that's most frustrating is that Pat Gelsinger was forced out of Intel, and a lot of the things that he was seeing as visions being implemented at Team Blue didn't actually end up coming to fruition. But Nvidia coming back and saying, I worked at Intel on Larrabee applications in 2007, then I went to Nvidia to work on machine learning in 2008. So I was there at both places at that time, and I can say Nvidia's dominance didn't come from luck. It came from vision and execution, which Intel lacked, which as a plebeian consumer and just looking at it from the outside in, I would tend to agree with Nvidia's take on this. Jensen and Team Green have been preparing for this transition for a long time. They were in the right place at the right time because of key vision ideas that Jensen made years ago, and now we're seeing the fruition of that. But let me know what you think of all of that while we also listen to Reece about today's deals.
Yo, welcome back to UFD Deals, bringing the hottest tech deals out on the internet. Happy Friday, everyone. Hope you guys have a great weekend. And to get you started off on the right foot, we've got some deals. The first up, we have the Corsair 4000D Airflow ATX mid-tower case available in black for only $79.99, making it $25 off. The next up, we have the Nanoleaf Line 60 Degrees Smarter Kit with 9 light lines for only $139.99, making it $60 off. I personally think it's a great gift for someone. The Lines kit is my personal favorite Nanoleaf kit available. And then lastly, we have the Samsung Viewfinity S50 GC back again because a further discount code brings it down to only $229.99, making it $150 off. And with that, the deals are done. You can find these and more linked in the video description down below. But until next time, I'm gonna hand you off back to Brad for the rest of your hot news. Cheers.
Okay, Reece, I got a deal for you. 2 monitors for the price of 1. That's exactly what LG announced with their new Ultra Gear monitor that can run at both 4K 240Hz on its 32-inch OLED panel, as well as then 1080p 480Hz with the click of a hotkey at the bottom of the monitor, which this is a technology that I have been wondering why it doesn't exist for quite some time. If you can run at a certain refresh rate at a higher resolution, can you find a panel that can then also do a higher than that refresh rate at a lower resolution? And now it looks like LG is going to be able to show this off at CES. The only real question I have, and I've kind of dug through a lot of user statements on this, is why? Like, I understand why you would want a 480Hz monitor. How many people are swapping between this on a regular basis where this is a commercially viable consumer product rather than just a really cool proof of concept that doesn't quite have the legs to be a successful product in the future? I'm really curious to hear, do you have a use case where you would actually use this, or can you just think of hypothetical scenarios where there's like that esports player who also wants to run Cyberpunk at 4K? That's the best thing I have, is like people who really want to play shooters but then also want to have super high fidelity AAA games. I don't know, but Apple knows how it wants to run AI, and that appears to be not necessarily on the cloud like a lot of their competitors are doing, but rather on the device itself, which makes a lot of sense given Apple's stance with a lot of other things. And one of the things that Apple's been doing in order to make this happen is figuring out how they can have low hits to things like flash storage or RAM in order to run their large language models locally on the device so that it's not taking up a ton of system resources, and that they've been able to have some breakthrough success in getting these large language models to run on things like a limited RAM setup, which bodes well for things in the future. Apple has been kind of quiet when it comes to AI, large language models, and the things that they're saying publicly. They did recently release a toolkit over on GitHub, so they are making some changes when it comes to how they're approaching this, but it remains to be seen how serious or when we're going to get something like an AI-empowered Siri assistant locally running on the device. So we'll have to wait for years to come to find out, and AMD wants you to know that as you wait for years to come, they are going to continue to support you when it comes to the AM5 socket. They discussed recently that they are still planning on supporting AM5 through 2025 plus. So if you are looking to adopt this latest generation of motherboards, you are still in good hands with Team Red. But don't forget about AM4, because we're going to talk about the most exciting CPU I've seen in a little while, the 5700X3D, as well as all of the APUs. I've gotten their pricing leaked by some data that's appeared online, And if these are to be trusted, this is actually going to bode very well for people who are still on the AM4 platform with something like a B450. You're still on something like a 3100 or a 3600, upgrading to something like the 5700 X3D, which is allegedly going to launch in the region of $260. That is going to be an incredible price for you to get 8 cores, 16 threads, and all of the 3D V-Cache that's going to accelerate games for years to come. We also see that things like the APUs, the 8700G is looking to be at $340, the A600G is looking to be $240, and the 8500G is looking to be at $190. So these are very compelling pricing. The only thing that seems to be missing from this list is the rumored 5500 X3D, which at this organization I would hope comes in below the $200 price point, but it's not quite clear if that is going to launch at some point. But seeing that the 5700 X3D is going to launch close to $250 when the 5800 X3D launched at close to $450, it's a very exciting time to still be on some of the legacy hardware, and it looks like AMD is still supporting the people who have lagged behind a little bit. And I'm lagging behind because I'm going to go to yesterday's episode of Hot News and look at the comments. Malignant saying, just wanted to jump in the comments to say thank you for all the great content this year. Appreciate you, man. Be sure to get some time in for yourself with the holidays coming up. All the best to you and your family. Number one, thank you. I really appreciate it. In case you actually want to do like a year in retrospect with us, we're going to be doing that in a week on Friday, December 29th on our Twitch stream. We're going to be reviewing all of the biggest streams that we had this year, as well as we have 5 prizes to give away. We have a 14900K 4090 PC to give away. We're also going to be drawing the winner for the Steam Deck OLED 512 gig, a ROG Ally Z1 version, $1,000 PC with a 4060 Ti, and then a 49-inch super ultra wide OLED monitor from Samsung. So all of that's going to be drawn next Friday, December 29th, as kind of a thank you to you, the audience who have been with us on our Twitch adventure this year, which has been great. And then when it comes to getting some time for myself this holiday, unfortunately, this whole business, our best, most lucrative times is during the holiday, but we'll be sure to take some breaks in January. I'm actually going on my first vacation, real vacation, in 7 years this coming January. So I'm excited for that, and so is the wife. Isn't that right? She said very. Then we got Jimmy saying, got 2 things I want to say. First, I want to say to you and Reece are both amazing handling hot news with your family stuff going on. And both you and Reece hopping on and knocking this out without missing a beat while you're traveling. You guys are rocking it. Reece is doing a really good job. I'm jealous of the setup that he has at his parents' house. And then secondly, it's crazy to see what a disadvantage Intel is at these days. I feel like the P and E core idea was cool, but it's pretty clear that Intel is struggling hard to get anywhere near AMD's level, and having to rely on specific OS scheduling and special software to be able to get the most out of a system is a huge disadvantage. Not to mention their high-end CPUs draw more power than the most mid-level GPUs right now, and AMD CPUs beat them at half that power budget. I can't imagine why anyone would buy Intel. I don't think Intel's at as big of a disadvantage as you would expect. They are still winning when it comes to the actual budget end of things. AMD still refusing to release anything less than a Ryzen 5 for a very long while, so they are succeeding when it comes to the 12100, 13100, 14100. Those have been doing really well for them. And then additionally, Intel is still very competitive when it comes to people who aren't just looking to game, but are also looking to be professionals at their jobs or with content creation. Having 24 cores, 32 threads on something like the 13 or 14900K is still very beneficial over something like the 7800 X3D. But then you also bring into the conversation the fact that AMD is doing the same thing on their best chips. The 7900 X3D and 7950 X3D require that scheduling. They require parking of cores. They require actually a little bit more active involvement than Intel does, because Intel worked with Microsoft to get Intel's thread director set up, whereas AMD isn't really that ingrained in the Microsoft Windows ecosystem. So even at the high end, AMD tried something where they also require the same thing that Intel does in order to get things working. So I hear you, like Intel is at a slight disadvantage. We're seeing that in sales where AMD is now outselling Intel yet again, but I also don't think it's as black and white as your statement may make it seem. And we got Magpie saying, as someone with an 8-year-old Fractal Tower case for my desktop with its original fans that came with the case still in it and spinning fine, I gotta say, if a fan looks that good and can last as long a decade, then I would not have a problem with paying $50 per fan if I wanted to make my PC look cool. And then we have Wolvie saying, does the fact that fans eventually die over time deter people from wanting to purchase such a high-priced fan setup? I'm not asking to kick a hornet's nest. I'm a believer in people have the ability to spend whatever they want with their money. And then K Senchi saying, there is no way I'm spending $150 $250 for fans. I had a lot of responses to this, but I think Mr. Blue Brewer sums it up probably best. Who's the market for these fans? By saying, if people are buying that fan, they likely don't care, as they will build a new system every year or more. It's a Halo product, which means it's mostly for marketing purposes. Seems to be working, as lots of channels have shown it. It's also a brand new type of product. A fan with an LCD screen is like a new market segment, so it's going to be expensive, kind of as a proof of concept, kind of like RGB was back in the day. It was a higher priced item. Now it's kind of ubiquitous and everywhere. We're also starting to see smaller LCD screens pop up on things like CPU coolers. That used to be a niche, high expensive thing, still kind of is, but it's trickling its way down. It's not necessarily what it is right now, it's what it's going to be in the future. And I also agree the people who are actually choosing to put that in their systems are typically of the much higher disposable income variety of people. And we got Lundy Boy saying, serious question about consoles. What makes someone choose one versus another? Console exclusive games almost feel like a thing of the past. Does it really come down to fanboys at this point? I stopped owning multiple consoles after the Xbox 360 PS3 era, even with the recent Sony controversy into deleting purchases. Am I missing what is inferior with the Series X? So console exclusives are definitely not a thing of the past. Nintendo Switch, very well selling console, has tons of exclusives that will likely never ever come to PC, besides with the form of emulators. Then you also have Sony, which does have timed exclusives at this point. They have committed that they're going to be bringing things to PC, but as somebody who likes to play a lot of these games and show support to the developers by paying full price to their games, I have a PlayStation 5 so that I can play the likes of God of War and God of War Ragnarok, Spider-Man 2, as well as Final Fantasy 16. Getting to play those on launch and showing my support to these devs when they make a game that is worth paying for, and I'm there to purchase it so that they can continue to do that, is something I appreciate. You could call me a fanboy for doing that, but I think that I'm very conscientious of my purchases and the types of games that I like to play, where I show my support for that. The problem with Xbox, as a lot of people talk about, is number one, they are a very US-centric console. Nintendo and Sony obviously very big in Japan. Microsoft has very much struggled to break into that market. Microsoft is not huge elsewhere in the world outside of the US, so they sell fewer units because of that. But then additionally, they also kind of have that issue where they release their exclusives on PC almost simultaneously. But then also, if you look at a lot of the exclusives that Microsoft has had as of late, they are not as compelling as some of the Sony first-party games have been when it comes to either how they review or how they sell. Things like Deathloop get kind of like a middling like excitement about them. But then you have Starfield, which likely did sell a lot of units, but also left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths because of how outdated it felt. But that's a Microsoft exclusive game. They own Bethesda now, so that's what we get. And then other games that were supposed to push Xbox forward, like Hellblade Senua's Saga. Like, there's no release date on that. There's things that Microsoft has done in the game development of their exclusives that has made it very difficult for people to actually be excited for them, and instead they go with Sony. And anyways, I'm gonna go because we're still in the hospital with my son. I needed to sneak away to do a little bit of work while my wife is with my son, but I need to get back to them. I will be back with more of the hottest tech news on Tuesday, because Monday is a holiday for us and for a lot of people. So see you on Tuesday.